Hey there, welcome back to the Smell of Logic channel. I am Ramona, and today's little Reddit video is going to be, can we share some funny stories about residents, co-workers, etc. So here we go, because sometimes you just need something less depressing, I guess. I'll go first. Not me, but the person posting this. I work in a memory care, and one of my residents had an hour-long conversation with another co-worker about how one of the CNAs was a spy. He says some things that gave it away as the excessive handshakes, being too nice, and being so well put together. He says he used to be a spy and knows what to look out for, and that this CNA is just too well rehearsed. Every time the CNA gives a handshake to the resident looks at me with a raised brow. I've asked him if he's ever found any info on this CNA, and he says no. I say, damn, he's good. And then the resident nods his head and asks me to keep him updated on his behavior. One old lady once told me she wanted a Magic Mike poster in her room because she loves Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum. There. I hope you got her one. That's what somebody says. I walked in a resident's room, never met them before, and there was like 5 or 6 photos of Channing Tatum on their walls. Apparently he's very popular. I don't get it, but hey, to each their own. This one is kind of gross, but really funny. We have one old lady who flat out refuses to put on a brief most days. She walks up and down the halls, and sometimes if we forget, or it's one of those days where she refuses to be led to the bathroom, we have a giant mess to clean up. We also have another resident who can never ever leave anything sweet or you can never leave anything sweet or food up because he eats it. One day, the lady passes the man who shook her dress in the way we know what meant that she'd had a BM. But before we could reach it, the other resident picked it up and proceeded to take a bite. He then proclaimed, "This chocolate tastes like shit." We were all horrified, but later we laughed our asses off. That's horrible. This literally just happened. My PT is in the late 80s and extremely hard of hearing. PT says, "Are you working tomorrow?" Tomorrow being Easter. Me says, "Nope, I get to spend it with my family." PT says, "Do you have any kids?" Me, "No, I'm only 20. PT shakes her head and shrugs, I don't care if you're gay." Me, crying, laughing, says, "No, I'm only 20, barely an adult." PT said, "I thought I heard you wrong. Good for you." We all do this while bed bathing and changing. That's not an awkward conversation at all. I came into a resident's room to check and see if he needed to be changed, and I noticed that he had a piece of cotton taped to his arm. I said, "Oh, you must have had some blood drawn." He said, "Yeah, I have holes all over my arm. I look like a heroin addict." I almost died laughing. Then to top it off, I went to check his brief, and he said, "You want me to whip it out?" I got home later and started laughing again. Back in the day, I was a CNA in the early 80s, we had a male resident who always said inappropriate things during his AM care, and several CNAs refused him on their assignment and would trade him for a different resident. I was prepared to start washing him one morning, and he threw back the sheet and said, "I bet you never seen one this big before, have you?" I looked him right in the eye and said, "Mr. X, I've seen a barrel of pickles doing their job. Nothing surprises me." He started laughing like crazy, and so did I. After that, he stopped the shock remarks and told me about his life. We became friends, and I sat with him the night he passed. One of the last things he said to me was, "It's a great world, if you don't weaken." I'll never forget him. I've just started a new job, and my first shift buddy was in the low-care dementia wing. One of the residents, a nun, comes up to me and says, "You're fat. Look at your legs." Most people would be insulted, but I find it hilarious when I get those comments, because I am still fat, but I've lost half of my body weight in the last 2 years, and I just imagine what they'd say if I was still that big. The same resident was later calling me beautiful, which made me laugh again. I was passing meds just the other night. I walked into a resident's apartment and said, "Hi, Mr. XYZ. It's 8 o'clock in the evening, and I am here. I have your medication for you." He replied with, "Oh, good. Now I don't have to wait for my coffee till 11 a.m. I really hate that." I'm not sure what he meant, but I'm glad that he doesn't have to wait. One time, I was working the night shift, the NOC, I'm assuming that's night shift, in the dementia ward. I had a guy who would not sleep at night. He would wander all around while I was busy and follow me when I wasn't. Super sweet guy. One night I was sitting at a table with him and had a bag of broccoli, some ranch, and a little soda. I told him that I had to use the restroom and to please not touch the food or drink. As soon as I closed the bathroom door, which was right off from where we were sitting, I heard him pop the soda can. I kind of just laughed to myself about it. When I came back out, he had a huge grin on his face and ranch all over his mouth. I have a ton of funny stories with him. He was really great. Stubborn, very sick COVID patient with multiple incidents of violence to staff, including hitting male nurse in the neck. He's a big guy but needed oxygen and would constantly take his mask off. I had to give him his meds due to the female nurse being afraid to get close to him. We found after one brief battle he tended to listen more to me and allow me to do some things. Patient, I'm not taking pills. That blank loves Biden and is probably trying to kill me. Me, she's not. She takes care of all of her patients. How would you even know who she would vote for? Patient, I don't trust it. Just look at her smiling. Me, I know that she's smiling because you refused. She knows if you refuse, you could eventually die, and that's one less Republican voter. So any time you refuse, it's like taking a vote away from Trump. Sarcastically, so let's go Brandon. Patient says, Nurse, I'm taking my meds. I want you to watch me so you know I'm going to show you. The afterwards nurse says, What did you tell him that got him to cooperate? You don't want to know. I'm just not even sure it's allowed, but just look really mad when he's getting away with something. Took his meds for the rest of his stay. One of my favorites asked me today if she could borrow my elbow hair. I said yes. Good. Caring is sharing. We had a little old lady give a little old lady a suppository. She looked at me and said, If you do that, I will slap you in the face. It's fair enough. I was finishing up care to one of my residents and saying good night. She looked at me and said, You know, you're a good girl. Before I could even respond, she added, Not very pretty, but no one is ever both. Then she reached up and turned out her light. Then someone replied with, Hot damn, she roasted you, but in the nicest way possible. We have a resident who's wicked old, and by the time she was like 110, when her sister, 112, was admitted. It was peak COVID, so we had to isolate her sister for 2 weeks, but she would not stay in her room. She would come out in the hallways yelling and singing, I'm going to go see my sister. I'm going to go see my sister. Sadly, she passed not even a week after isolation. That's sad. This morning, while giving 2 cognitive residents suppositories, I told them both that I had an Easter present for them, but it wasn't going in their mouth, and the chocolate wouldn't be any good. Staff bathrooms smelled notoriously bad for extended periods. Then the break room as well. Found out disgruntled aide had been peeing in the trash cans. I set a physically and cognitively disabled lady on the toilet and asked her if she needs anything. I'd love to read the newspaper right now. She can't hold newspaper. She can't even read. But it's hilarious that I got to, share that with her. One of her residents has a wig, but if you try to put it on her head, she says, No, ha ha ha, that's my puppy. She holds it in her lap and pets it, and we give her a brush, and she sits there all day brushing it, and it makes her happy. A lady, like in her 80s, sits at the dining table and gives a smirk and states, Intercourse, regarding nothing in particular. We had an old man who had Alzheimer's, but had also been a hoarder. APS took him and his wife out of their house because it was unlivable. Despite his Alzheimer's, he didn't forget how to hoard. He would put utensils in his socks, and he would find all kinds of things hidden in his pillowcases when we would make his bed. One of my dementia people didn't like how management was running the place. She wanted to apply for the position. She insisted on me giving her an interview that lasted an hour. When we were done, she had forgotten why we were talking. Unfortunately, she didn't get the job. One time, on night shift, the police contacted my facility, and apparently a confused resident in the short-term section had dropped his call button. So he dialed to call 911 and report it as an emergency. The police figured out that what was probably happening, but they had to come out anyway since an emergency call has been placed. It's my favorite short and sweet story to tell, but I'm trying to explain how it is working with people who aren't always alert and oriented, and how it can create some interesting situations. This job will never get boring, that's for sure. I worked in an adult family home, and there were 6 old ladies. 5 were very conservative, church-going, stereotypical grannies, and then there was Shirley. Shirley was about the same age as the others. They were in their 90s or so, except that she was covered in tattoos with dyed burgundy hair, smoked, wore a long purple faux fur coat around the house every day because she couldn't go out onto the porch to smoke. One morning, when I was getting everyone to the breakfast table to eat, one of the other ladies asks, really loudly, "Is that prostitute still here?" I asked her who she was talking about, just as Shirley comes in to her seat on the table. "That hooker right there." She was pointing right at poor Shirley. By the way, Shirley just ignored her, and she was my favorite resident there. I ended up adopting her cat after she passed away. Had a very confused elderly woman say that they were running a brothel out of the adult family home, and that people's families coming to visit were the customers. She'd say things to the female aides. "I know what you girls are up to. All those men coming and going." Those are some good stories. I hope you enjoyed listening to them. They gave you a little lighter tone than some of my other videos that I do. If you liked it, leave a like. If you didn't, that's okay too. But possibly leave a comment on this or some of the other videos. I would really appreciate it. Helps the algorithm, helps promote the channel. You know all the things. You've been doing this before. But anyway, thank you for listening and watching, and we'll talk to you later. Bye. Hey there. So for all of you coloring book enthusiasts out there, I have a couple over on my Amazon authors page. This one here is called the Easy to Color coloring book. It's good for kids. It's also good for older people like myself that have arthritic conditions, and it's hard for me and not quite as enjoyable to do a lot of those little intricate coloring books. I still love to color. I color quite often. It's just I don't have the skills and the fine touch to do a lot of the more intricate stuff. So I created this one to color and have fun with, and I'm pretty proud of it. It's the Easy to Color coloring book, and there's quotes on the opposite pages for most of them. Some of them didn't take apparently because my formatting skills lack, but keep trying, right? So if you're interested, go look at them. There's a lot there to do. They're all hand drawn, so that's something that matters to you. It's not computer generated. It's all done by hand, which I know a lot of people would say, well, wait a second, if you have arthritis, why don't you just computer generate it? I'm not that fancy, as you can tell. But if you're into coloring or you know someone who is, even if it's kids, buy one of these and leave it. So if you have a niece or nephew that comes over and they're annoying you, you can just hand it to them and no one will care, right? Anyway, so go check it out. Check out some of the other stuff on my authors page over on Amazon. And we'll talk to you next time. Bye.